and we will be reporting about the overview of the skeleton. For the introduction, it will be me, Miss Hanali Vallejo. For the bone types, it will be discussed by Mr. Ronaldo Capinding. For the gross structure of the bone, it will be Miss Nina Espiritu. The plan of the skeleton, Miss Precious La Peña. And for the bone markings, it will be discussed by Miss Rochelle Padilla. And just like what I've said, we will be discussing about lab exercise number 10, the overview of the skeleton. So before we proceed, let's take a glimpse on the topic to be discussed by my groupmates. We have here the bone types, the gross structure of the bone, the plan of skeleton, bone markings. We have here the major organs of the skeletal system. We have bones, cartilages, and ligaments. And below are the examples. In this discussion, we will be focusing more on the bones since it is the most complex and the largest among the three. So let's proceed now to the next presenter.
Types of bones. We have 4 major classification of bones. Based on the shape of the bones, they are long, short, flat, and irregular bones. This one, the long bones, short bones, flat bones, and irregular bones. Long bones. Long bones are the cylindrical bones that are longer than they are wide. The long bones are the most common types of bone in the human skeleton. This bone can be vary in length, but they are characterized is that they are longer than they are wide. These bones are going to have shaft made primarily of compact bone and 2 bulky ends which often contain any spongy bone. The example of the long bones are the humerus, radius, ulna, metacarpals, metatarsals, phalanges, fibula, tibia, and femur. Next one is the short bones. Short bones are long as they are wide, sometimes having an almost cuboidal shapes. Short bones is have approximately the same length and in width, which give them a cube-like appearance. They consist most of spongy bones that is covered by a tiny layer of the compact bone. Sesamoid bones are the especially subcategory of short bones that are embedded in tendons. The example of the short bones are the tarsals and carpals. Next one is the flat bones. Flat bones are arise when bone tissue invades and hardens previous membranes, so they are sheet-like in a shape. They are usually curved rather than absolutely flat. Flat bones provide protection to vital organs, as the name of suggests. They are mostly flat and curved, having a thin plate-like formation. They contain a layer of spongy bone covered by a thin layer of compact bone. Some of the flat bones contains irregular structures of, for example, the scapula bone is a flat bone, but it contains a spine, acromion, and coracoid process that make it appear sometimes irregular. Another example of the flat bones is the cranial bones, scapulae, and sternum, and our ribs. The last one is the irregular bones. Irregular bones don't quite fit any of other categories because of the complex of their shapes. Irregular bones come in various funky shapes and size, and they don't fit any of other bones categories. The example of our irregular bones is our backbone. They are the vertebrae and sacrum.
Gross structure of bone. Each bone is an organ with its own osseous tissue, cartilage, dense connective tissue, epithelial tissue, adipose tissue, and nervous tissue. A long bone has 2 main regions: the diaphysis and the epiphysis. Ligaments connect bone to bone, give your joint support, and limit their movement. Gross structure of a long bone. As you can see in the picture, it has diaphysis, the long main portion of the bone, or this is the shaft of the bone. Diaphysis is the whole central shaft of a long bone. Only the external part of shaft, made of solid bone tissues, is visible from the external aspect. Periosteum. These are the fibrous connective tissue membrane, covers and protects the diaphysis, connected by Sharpie's fibers. Sharpie's fibers, or the bone fibers or perforating fiber, are a matrix of connective tissue consisting of bundles of strong, predominantly type collagen fibers connecting periosteum to bone. Metaphysis. It is the space between epiphysis and the diaphysis, region where diaphysis meets epiphysis. Epiphysis, proximal and distal ends of bone, or these are the bone heads. Epiphysis, rounded end of long bone at its joint with adjacent bones. Articular cartilage. These are the thin layer of hyaline cartilage covering as epiphyses of the bones that contact other bones, articulation, and form joint. Articular cartilage also reduces friction, absorbs shock, and these are freely movable joints. Epiphyseal plate is the area of growth in a long bone, layer of hyaline cartilage where ossification occurs in immature bones. Epiphyseal line. For adult bones, thin line of bony tissue is spanning the epiphysis, remnant of epiphyseal plate, plate of hyaline cartilage in young growing bone. Epiphyseal line cause lengthwise growth until the end of puberty. Medullary cavity. Yellow marrow, cavity of shaft. In adults, these are storage for adipose tissue, and in infants, area forms blood cells, red marrow. In adults, red marrow is confined to the cavities of spongy bone of flat bones and epiphyses of some long bones like sternum, ribs, femur, and cranium. Endosteum. Lining the inside of bone adjacent to medullary cavity is a layer of bone cells. Endosteum also mainly aids in the bone growth, repair, and remodeling. Rosy structure of a flat bone, sandwich-like construction. 2 layers of compact bone enclosing a middle layer of spongy bone, or the deep flow. Both surface of flat bone covered with periosteum. Diplo, spongy area in cranium. Absorbs shock, marrow spaces lined with endosteum.
And now we will discuss the plan of the skeleton. In human skeleton, we have 206 bones. The function of human skeleton is produce the blood tissue, store fat and minerals, protect vital organs, allow movement of the body, and provide a supporting framework. The human skeleton is divided into two. It is egg-shell skeleton and appendicular skeleton. If you see the picture of human skeleton, the egg-shell skeleton is the color green and the appendicular skeleton is the color blue. We will also discuss the extra bones of the human body. Egg-shell skeleton is a form of a long axis of the body. It is composed of 80 bones, and that 80 bones is divided into four parts. It is skulls, hyoid, vertebrae, and ribcage. In skulls, we have 28 bones. In hyoid, we have 1. Hyoid bone is the only bone that does not articulate with another bone. We have 26 bones in vertebrae or vertebral column, and we have 25 in rib cage bones. In appendicular skeleton, we have a 126 bones. The appendicular skeleton are consists of the bone of the upper limbs, lower limbs, shoulder bone, and hip bones. 126 bones is divided into two parts. It is upper extremities and lower extremities. In upper extremities, from shoulder to arm, we have a 64 bones. And the lower extremities, from hip to foot, we have a 62 bones. Now we will discuss the extra bones. Some people have more bones, but each person has a different types, location, and numbers of extra bones. We have two types of extra bones. It is sesamoid bones and Warmian bones, or also called sutural bones. Sesamoid bones is a tiny rounded specks often found within tendons of the hand and foot. Warmian bones or sutural bones is a flat bones that form in the suture between the cranial bones of the skull. If you see the first picture of the foot, the sesamoid bones are found in the base of the thumb of our foot. And while the Warmian bones or sutural bones are founded within the suture.
Bone markings and features. Number 1 is head. Distinct epiphysis on a long bone separated from the shaft by a narrowed portion or neck. Next is the neck. Narrowed portion usually at the base of a head. Angle we describe as a corner. Body, the main portion of the bone. Condyle, the rounded bump usually fits into a fossa or another bone forming a joint. Crest, moderately raised ridge, generally a site of muscle attachment. Next is epicondyle. Bump near a condyle often gives the appearance of the bump on bump for muscle attachment. Facet, flat surface that forms a joint with another facet or flat bone. Fissure, long crack-like hole for blood vessels and nerves. Next is the foramen, round hole for vessels and nerves. And the fossa is the depression often receives an articulating bone. And the line is similar to the crest but not raised. Margin, edge of a flat bone or flat portion of a regular bone. Meatus, tube-like opening or channel. Notch, V-like depression in a margin or edge of flat area. Process, raised area or projection. Ramus, a curved portion of a bone like ram's horn. Next is sinus, cavity within a bone. Spine is similar to the crest but raised more, a sharp pointed process for muscle attachment. Sulcus, groove or elongated depression. Trochanter, large bump for muscle attachment, larger than tubercle or tuberosity. Tubercle, a smaller version of a tuberosity. Tuberosity, in femur bone, we can see the example of trochanter, head, neck, facet, tubercle, and condyle. And skull bone, you can see the sinus, foramen, process, fissure, and ramus. In humerus bone, we have the tubercle, head, sulcus, neck, tuberosity, fossa, and trochlea. In pelvis bone, the crest, fossa, spine, line, foramen, and ramus. It has also have a list of bones beginning to the top on how they fit in a skeletal plan. On actual bones, first is the occipital, next is the mandible, third is the hyoid, sternum rib, second thoracic and sacrum. And for the appendicular bones, the first is the humerus, radius, pelvic, femur, patella, tibia, fifth, metatarsal. So that's the end of our topic today, which is the overview of the skeleton. Thank you and have a blessed day, everyone. From Group 3.